Imagine waking up one morning, groggily reaching for your phone, and realizing something is off. Something big. You try to roll out of bed, but instead of your feet meeting the floor with a satisfying thud, you float a few inches up, your body weightless and ungrounded. You check the news, and sure enough, gravity has stopped working. Your morning coffee doesn't just sit in the cup. It floats gently to the ceiling, splattering like a sci-fi movie gone wrong. The ground, once a reliable partner, has become a distant memory. It's no longer there to keep you rooted, to keep your feet on solid ground. Welcome to a world where up is no longer the enemy of down. In this gravity-less existence, humanity faces one of the most bizarre and chaotic apocalypses ever imagined. It's like your childhood nightmares of floating away into space. But now, it's real. And there's no coming back to the Earth's embrace. Everything is different. Airplanes? Useless. Shopping carts? No longer practical. Grocery stores? An exercise in trying to chase your floating can of beans down an aisle. Forget what you knew about how life worked, because gravity just hit pause. But before you spiral into full-on panic, don't worry. While the world may be upside down, or more accurately, everywhere at once, this guide has you covered. Tips to survive. The end of gravity is here to provide you with practical, albeit absurd, strategies for surviving in a weightless world. From tying yourself to the heaviest object in your house to learning how to sleep when your bed doesn't make sense anymore. We're going to guide you through the chaos with a combination of humor, science, well, sort of, and a bit of dark, gravity-deprived wit. Now, let's face it, nobody was prepared for this. Even the scientists are probably floating around in disbelief, their calculations all but useless in the face of cosmic absurdity. But what matters now is that you don't panic. You've got a few tricks up your sleeve, and as long as you've got a roll of duct tape, a few well-placed anchors, and the will to survive, you'll make it through just fine. Remember, the new rules of physics may have left you in a bit of a tailspin, but as long as you follow these tips, you'll stay grounded in a world that's anything but. So, buckle up, or, well, tie yourself to something heavy, and prepare to learn how to float through this bizarre, no-gravity world. The ground may be gone, but your will to survive certainly isn't. Tip 1. Tie yourself to something heavy. When gravity packs its bags and leaves the planet, your first instinct might be to panic. Don't. Instead, grab the heaviest object within arm's reach and make it your new best friend. Whether it's a cast-iron stove, a refrigerator, or your collection of unread hardcover novels, you need an anchor, literally. Without one, you're a stray balloon at a birthday party, destined to drift aimlessly until you find yourself stuck in a tree, or worse, floating out of the atmosphere entirely. The trick to surviving in a weightless world is understanding the rules of tethering. First, choose your anchor wisely. Bigger isn't always better. Something large but hollow, like a lightweight dresser, won't keep you grounded. You want density. A fully stocked chest freezer? Perfect. A cement-filled planter? Even better. If you're unsure, try giving your anchor a shove. If it moves more than an inch, it's not worthy of your trust. Next, invest in rope. Lots of rope. If you don't have rope, improvise. Bed sheets, electrical cords, even belts can be repurposed to keep you attached to your anchor. Just make sure your knots are solid. You don't want to be halfway through dinner, only to realize your makeshift tether has come loose, sending you and your spaghetti into a slow-motion spiral toward the ceiling. Learn a few basic knot-tying techniques. Your future self will thank you. But what about when you need to move? Anchoring yourself isn't just about staying put. It's about mobility. Create a portable tethering system by tying yourself to objects that can slide or roll along the floor, assuming they aren't floating yet. A sturdy chair with wheels can double as both transportation and a temporary anchor. If you're feeling inventive, build a harness system that lets you stay attached while keeping your hands free. The possibilities are endless when you're trying to defy the lack of gravity. Finally, don't underestimate the psychological comfort of being tethered. Floating freely might seem fun at first, but the novelty wears off the moment you realize you're completely untethered, spinning aimlessly with nothing to hold on to. Your anchor isn't just a physical necessity. It's a mental lifeline in a world that no longer makes sense. Tie yourself down and take a deep breath. You've got this. Tip 2. Embrace the power of duct tape. When the apocalypse comes, it's not fire or water or even aliens you'll want on your side. It's duct tape. In a world without gravity, duct tape transcends its already legendary reputation to become your ultimate survival tool. It's no longer just for fixing broken pipes or taping up cardboard boxes. Now, it's your lifeline, your tool belt, and maybe even your fashion statement. The first rule of zero-gravity duct tape use is simple. Stick everything down. Your furniture, tape it to the floor. Your fridge, duct tape it to the wall. That expensive vase you swore you'd never use for anything? Guess what? It's now duct taped to the nearest counter. The goal here is simple: prevent chaos. The last thing you need is rogue furniture bumping into you while you're trying to eat cereal out of a floating bowl. But duct tape isn't just for securing objects, it's for securing you. Without gravity, every move you make becomes a potential flight risk. A few strategically placed strips of duct tape can keep you anchored during important moments, like brushing your teeth or scrolling through your phone, if the internet still works. Sure, it's not glamorous, but survival rarely is. Pro tip: use it to create foot straps on the floor so you can stand in one spot without floating off. Now, let's talk about duct tape innovation. Need a makeshift harness to keep yourself tied to your favorite heavy object? Duct tape. Want to construct a rudimentary handle on the ceiling to pull yourself across the room? Duct tape. In a pinch, you can even use duct tape to patch holes in windows or doors, keeping precious air inside and rogue debris outside. It's the Swiss Army knife of adhesives. And in this new reality, you'll never want to be without it. Of course, duct tape isn't without its quirks. Overuse it and you'll find yourself in a sticky situation, literally. A poorly placed piece can trap hair, snag clothing, or leave you glued to your improvised anchor for hours. The trick is to use it strategically. Apply just enough to get the job done, but not so much that you're cocooned in a shiny silver prison of your own making. In the end, duct tape is more than just a tool. It's a symbol of humanity's ability to adapt. When gravity abandons us, we don't give up. We stick things back together. With duct tape in hand, you're not just surviving the apocalypse. You're thriving. So stock up, get creative, and embrace the chaos. Duct tape will hold your world together, literally. Tip 3. Avoid open spaces. In a gravity-free world, open spaces are no longer just places to stretch your legs or get some fresh air. They're floating death traps. That wide open park you used to jog through, now a sky-high obstacle course of rogue squirrels and loose picnic blankets. Your once beloved backyard, a launching pad for stray lawn chairs and, potentially, you. The new survival mantra is simple. If it's open, it's dangerous. Without gravity, open spaces turn into vast, unpredictable voids where one wrong step, or push, can send you floating into oblivion. The winds that once carried your kite on a breezy afternoon can now turn you into an unwilling balloon, drifting far beyond anyone's ability to retrieve you. And while you may think, oh, I'll just hold on to something, open spaces often lack the convenient handholds and tether points you'll desperately need. The first rule of navigating this new reality is to avoid open spaces altogether. Stick to enclosed environments like your home, office, or any place with walls to anchor yourself. Hallways and smaller rooms are your new friends. Wide open fields and parking lots? Deadly. And don't even think about going near a rooftop unless you've got a concrete plan and a lot of rope. Trust me, you don't want to be the person who ends up on the news as the one who floated into space because they thought the park was safe. But what if you must venture into an open space? Let's say your food stash is running low and the nearest grocery store is across a large parking lot. Preparation is key. Equip yourself with a tether system that allows you to stay securely tied to something heavy or stationary. If that's not possible, carry a weighted backpack to act as a counterbalance. Remember, the more weight you carry, the harder it will be for a stray gust to launch you skyward. Visibility is another critical factor. In open spaces, you're vulnerable not just to floating away, but to being hit by airborne objects. Keep your eyes peeled for hazards like loose trash cans, runaway bicycles, or, heaven forbid, a rogue lawn flamingo coming straight for your head. Wear protective gear if you can. An old helmet or even a sturdy hat can save you from a painful and embarrassing collision. Finally, never underestimate the value of strategic retreat. If the open space looks too risky, don't chance it. Your survival isn't worth a quick dash through a windy parking lot. Find alternate routes, build temporary barriers, or simply wait it out until conditions improve. Open spaces are now hostile territory, and surviving them requires caution, creativity, and a solid understanding of your limitations. In this new world, freedom comes at a cost. Wide open spaces might look tempting, but they're a gravitational minefield waiting to send you spiraling. So play it safe, stay anchored, and remember, walls are your friends. Tip 4. Master low gravity movement. In a world without gravity, moving from point A to point B is no longer as simple as walking. The moment you lift a foot, or even wiggle too much, you're at risk of launching yourself into an awkward, slow-motion tumble. Without proper technique, you'll spend more time flailing like a broken marionette than actually getting anywhere. If you want to survive the end of gravity, it's time to master the art of low-gravity movement. First, let's talk about propulsion. In the absence of gravity, every movement you make propels you in the opposite direction. A small push against a wall might send you sailing across the room, while an accidental sneeze can leave you spinning, like an astronaut who forgot their jetpack. The key is to move deliberately and with as little force as possible. Think slow, controlled motions, less sprinting, more tai chi. To practice, start in a confined space where you can grab onto walls or furniture. Try using your hands and feet to push off gently, aiming for smooth gliding rather than jerky leaps. If you're lucky enough to have a sturdy surface, use it to pull yourself along, hand over hand, like scaling an invisible ladder. The goal is to stay in control of your trajectory, while avoiding the kind of wild flailing that leads to unplanned furniture collisions. Next, learn to navigate vertical spaces. Without gravity holding you down, ceilings and walls are just as viable as floors. Use them to your advantage, but remember, momentum is both your friend and your enemy. A well-timed kick can send you soaring to your destination, but overdo it and you'll ricochet like a pinball. Practice calculating how much force you need for a precise landing. Start small and work your way up. Of course, no discussion of low-gravity movement would be complete without mentioning the inevitable bumps and bruises. You will crash into things. It's unavoidable. To minimize the damage, consider wearing padded clothing or even repurposing sports gear like elbow and knee pads. Your dignity might take a hit, but at least your body will remain, mostly, intact. Finally, accept that there's a learning curve. You're not going to master low-gravity movement overnight, and that's okay. The important thing is to keep practicing, experimenting, and refining your technique. Treat every misstep as a lesson, because in this gravityless world, adaptability is your greatest asset. With time, you'll be gliding through rooms with the grace of an Olympic figure skater, or at least not crashing into the ceiling fan anymore. In this new reality, movement isn't just about getting from place to place, it's about survival. So embrace the challenge, master the art of controlled propulsion, and turn your zero-gravity awkwardness into a finely tuned skill. You've got this. Tip 5. Keep your supplies grounded. In a gravity-free world, survival is all about access to the basics: food, water, and the occasional sanity-saving snack. But here's the thing. Those essentials aren't going to stay in your kitchen pantry or neatly stacked on shelves anymore. Without gravity, they're going to float, drift, and, if you're unlucky, escape completely. Your survival now hinges on keeping your supplies grounded and within reach. Start by identifying your essentials. Canned goods, bottled water, and durable snacks are your best friends in this topsy-turvy apocalypse. Light items like chips or cereal may seem convenient, but trust me, a single puff of air will send them spiraling into the void. Opt for heavier items whenever possible. They're less likely to turn into rogue projectiles, and they're easier to secure. Now, let's talk strategy. Every item in your survival arsenal needs to be anchored, and I don't just mean loosely stacked in a corner. Think straps, bungee cords, or even the trusty duct tape from Tip 2. Create designated storage zones where every item is secured to a heavy base, preferably one that's tethered to the floor. Cabinets are still useful, but make sure they're sealed tight. Otherwise, You might open a door and find an explosion of floating spaghetti sauce jars waiting to greet you. Weighted storage bins are your new best friends. Fill them with supplies, then weigh them down with whatever you have on hand. Bricks, dumbbells, or even that stack of unread textbooks you've been avoiding. The goal is to create a gravity simulation, keeping your supplies from floating out of reach. Bonus points if you can label each bin for quick access. There's nothing worse than rummaging through a floating mess of canned goods while your precious seconds of tethered safety tick away. But what happens when supplies inevitably escape? Because let's face it, something will. This is where your skills in low-gravity movement, see Tip 4, come into play. Learn to gently nudge items back toward you without sending them careening further away. A broom or long stick can act as an excellent retrieval tool, helping you guide rogue supplies back to your grasp without risking an untethered disaster. Finally, don't underestimate the psychological comfort of having your supplies securely grounded. In a world where everything feels unmoored, having a stash of safe, reachable essentials can make all the difference. Knowing you can grab a water bottle or a protein bar without chasing it around the room provides a small but vital sense of control. In a gravity-free world, organization isn't just a luxury, it's a lifeline. Secure your supplies, anchor them well, and make sure nothing important floats out of your reach. Because in the chaos of a floating apocalypse, staying prepared is the key to survival. Tip 6. Beware of falling objects. In a world where gravity has checked out, falling objects might seem like the least of your worries. After all, without gravity, nothing can really fall, right? Wrong. The lack of gravity doesn't mean danger has disappeared. It just means danger is now unpredictable, floating, and far more creative in how it finds you. What goes up may not come down right away, but when it does, you'll want to be ready. The first rule of surviving rogue objects is vigilance. Anything that's been floating in the air for hours, or even days, could come crashing down when you least expect it. Picture this: a forgotten vase, lazily hovering near the ceiling, suddenly dislodged by the faintest breeze. You're casually sipping tea when bam, a ceramic missile to the skull. Gravity might be gone, but physics hasn't abandoned us entirely, and momentum is still very much a thing. Identify the risks in your immediate surroundings. Heavy objects like furniture, appliances, and even your old bowling trophies are all potential hazards. Secure these items as much as possible using duct tape, Tip 2, or sturdy straps. Pay special attention to sharp objects. Knives, scissors, and broken glass are now the ultimate floating nightmares. Store these in sealed containers, or better yet, tether them securely out of reach. What about smaller items that are harder to track? Pens, books, and your kid's collection of Lego bricks might not seem threatening, but when floating at head level, they become painful little projectiles waiting for the right moment to strike. Keep an eye out for these lurking hazards, and periodically sweep your space to collect stray items. A long stick or broom can help you corral the smaller floaters without risking a face-to-face collision. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Or rather, the elephant above the room. If you live in a multi-story building, the dangers don't stop at your ceiling. Rogue objects from upstairs neighbors can drift into your space, especially if walls or floors become compromised. Invest in reinforced netting or improvise barriers to catch anything that decides to make an unexpected entrance from above. Finally, always wear protective gear when moving through a cluttered or unsecured area. A bike helmet, goggles, or even an old hockey mask can shield you from potential head injuries. Sure, you might look ridiculous, but in a world where rogue objects can strike at any time, a little embarrassment is better than a concussion. Remember, the absence of gravity hasn't eliminated the chaos. It's just turned it into a three-dimensional minefield. Stay alert, secure your surroundings, and always be ready for the unexpected. Because in a world without gravity, danger doesn't fall, it floats. Tip 7. Learn to navigate indoors. Without gravity, your home has transformed into a floating jungle gym, and every movement is a potential experiment in aerodynamics. Walking? Forget it. Running? Laughable. Now, you're navigating a three-dimensional labyrinth where every wall, ceiling, and floor is a potential surface. Indoors might feel like the safest option in a weightless world, but without the right skills, it can become just as treacherous as floating outside. It's time to master the art of indoor navigation. The first rule of movement indoors is to ditch the mindset that you need a traditional floor. In a world where gravity no longer dictates where your feet belong, the walls and ceilings are fair game. Use them to your advantage. Push off one surface to glide gently toward another, and remember to use your hands as much as your feet. You're not just walking anymore. You're swimming through air. Next, control your momentum. It's easy to push off too hard and end up slamming into the nearest wall or bookshelf. To avoid becoming a human pinball, practice gentle, calculated movements. A light push with your fingertips can take you further than you think, so go slow and steady. Overcompensation is your enemy here. Too much force could send you hurtling into Aunt Mabel's precious porcelain collection. Speaking of obstacles, every piece of furniture is now both a potential ally and a hazard. Tables, chairs, and counters can be used as handholds or launching points, but they can also block your path if you're not careful. Take some time to rearrange your living space for maximum efficiency. Clear pathways, secure loose objects, tip 2. And consider adding strategically placed ropes or railings for easier navigation. Corners and doorways are particularly tricky. Without gravity to keep you grounded, turning a corner can send you spinning uncontrollably. To master the art of directional changes, learn to anchor pivot by grabbing a nearby surface and using it to guide your movement. It's like Tarzan swinging through the jungle, if the jungle were your living room and the vines were your furniture. Lastly, be prepared for emergencies. If you overshoot your destination or lose control, have a backup plan. Keep a rope or strap handy to lasso yourself back to safety, and always maintain awareness of your surroundings. The goal is to move with purpose, avoiding unnecessary collisions and conserving energy. Think of yourself as an astronaut on a space station, navigating with precision and grace. Indoor navigation in a gravity-free world isn't just a survival skill, it's an art form. With practice, you'll transform from a clumsy floater into a master of zero-gravity movement, able to glide through your home like a weightless ninja. Just watch out for the ceiling fan. Tip 8. Reinvent sleep. Sleep is supposed to be your escape from the chaos, a sanctuary where you can forget the laws of physics have gone haywire. But in a gravity-free world, even the simple act of lying down is an adventure. Without gravity to hold you snug in bed, the second you drift off, you're drifting off, straight into a wall, a lamp, or your unsuspecting pet. If you want to rest safely, you'll need to rethink how sleep works. First, abandon your bed as you know it. A traditional mattress is just a floating launch pad in zero gravity. You'll wake up either tangled in your sheets like a rogue ghost, or gently spinning above your bedroom like a human ceiling fan. Instead, consider alternative sleep setups. Sleeping bags tethered to the floor or wall can be your new best friend. They keep you contained and eliminate the risk of waking up floating face first into your dresser. For extra security, cocoon yourself. Weighted blankets, which were once a luxury for relaxation, are now a survival essential. They add just enough resistance to keep you from drifting without making you feel trapped. If you don't have a weighted blanket, improvise. Pile a few layers of heavy fabric or even duct tape, see tip 2. The corners of your regular blanket to your chosen sleeping spot. If you're sharing a space with others, be mindful of their sleep setups too. The last thing you want is to wake up with someone else's elbow in your face because they forgot to tether themselves. Establish clear sleep zones with enough distance to prevent mid-air collisions. Bonus points. If you can coordinate a system of signals for when someone needs to get up without disrupting the rest of the group. A gentle poke with a broom works wonders. Lighting is another consideration. In zero gravity, even a slight push off your blanket can send you spinning toward the nearest lamp or light switch. Use dim, stable lighting to avoid accidental illuminations that could jolt you awake. Or worse, leave you tangled in your tether trying to fix it. Night lights mounted securely on walls can create a calming, consistent glow to help you drift off peacefully. Lastly, accept that sleep in a gravity-free world will never feel quite normal. You might miss the comfort of being cradled by your mattress, or the sense of grounded stillness that gravity once provided. But over time, you'll adjust. You'll find your rhythm, your preferred cocoon setup, and your unique way of navigating the strange new realities of bedtime. Until then, embrace the absurdity. After all, how many people get to say they've slept in mid-air? Tip 9. Build a community tether zone. Survival in a gravity-free apocalypse is hard enough on your own, but the isolation makes it even worse. Humans are social creatures, and in a world where you're constantly floating into chaos, there's strength and sanity in numbers. That's why creating a community tether zone should be a top priority. This isn't just about surviving. It's about thriving with a little help from your friends, and maybe your weird neighbor who hoards duct tape. First, find your team. Whether it's your family, roommates, or that one coworker who's always weirdly prepared for emergencies, gather a group of like-minded individuals. Survival is a team sport now, and the more hands and tethers you have, the better your odds. Just make sure everyone agrees on the rules. There's no room for floaters, literally or figuratively, in a well-organized tether zone. Once you've assembled your crew, designate a central location for your tether zone. Choose a space that's enclosed, secure, and easy to navigate. Your living room, basement, or a large garage are all great options. Clear out unnecessary clutter and anchor heavy furniture to create solid grab points for everyone. If the space has multiple levels, use ropes or ladders to create safe passageways between floors. Now comes the fun part: setting up the tethers. Think of this as building your own floating jungle gym. Use ropes, straps, and even bungee cords to create a network of pathways and anchor points. Each person should have their own tether that connects to the central system, allowing them to move freely without risking an accidental drift into the stratosphere. Label each tether to avoid awkward mid-air collisions, or worse, someone accidentally disconnecting yours. A well-functioning tether zone isn't just practical, it's also a morale booster. Create communal spaces where people can eat, rest, and even laugh about the absurdity of your situation. Designate areas for shared activities, like board games or storytelling sessions. In a world where everything else feels unmoored, having a space to connect with others can be the difference between despair and hope. Finally, prepare for emergencies. Equip your tether zone with shared supplies, such as water, food, and medical kits, all securely anchored, of course. Establish safety protocols for what to do if someone's tether breaks or if floating debris threatens your sanctuary. Practice these drills regularly, because nothing bonds a community like narrowly avoiding a mid-air collision with a rogue recliner. In a gravity-free world, your survival depends not just on your own ingenuity, but on the connections you build with others. A community tether zone isn't just about staying safe, it's about rediscovering the human spirit in the midst of chaos. Together, you'll float, adapt, and laugh your way through the apocalypse. Tip 10. Accept the absurdity. Let's face it, the end of gravity isn't something you can entirely prepare for. It's bizarre, chaotic, and downright ridiculous. You've spent countless hours tethering yourself to furniture, dodging airborne lamps, and figuring out how to sleep without drifting into your ceiling fan. At some point, you have to stop fighting the absurdity of it all and embrace the floating lunacy that is your new reality. First, understand that this isn't normal, and it's never going to be. You're not going to wake up tomorrow to find gravity politely knocking on your door, asking to be let back in. This is your life now, and that's okay. Laugh at the ridiculousness of it all. The way your dog now spends more time floating upside down than barking, or how your cereal refuses to stay in its bowl no matter how carefully you pour the milk. Humor is your best weapon against the chaos. Next, start finding the silver linings. Sure, gravity's absence is a massive inconvenience, but it's also an opportunity to experience life in a way no human ever has. Want to feel like a superhero? Leap from wall to wall, like you're in your own personal zero-gravity action movie. Need a pick-me-up? Literally pick yourself up and float to a new perspective. Ceilings make great lounging spots now. Lean into the absurdity by letting go of old habits that no longer serve you. Forget about trying to sit properly at a table. It's all about floating picnics now. Stop stressing about perfectly arranged furniture. It's time to embrace creative tethering. The moment you stop clinging to the way things used to be, you'll discover a surprising amount of joy in the way things are. Finally, share your newfound perspective with others. Post-apocalyptic life doesn't have to be lonely or grim. Make it a point to connect with others and laugh together about the wild, weightless world you're navigating. Host a zero-gravity dinner party where everyone floats while eating, as long as food is securely anchored. Invent new sports, like mid-air dodgeball or ceiling tag. When the world turns upside down, finding moments of joy and connection is more important than ever. At the end of the day, or what passes for a day in this weightless existence, Survival is as much about mindset as it is about practical tips. The world has changed, and so must you. So tie yourself down, strap on some humor, and float into the absurd adventure that is life without gravity. Because if you can laugh in the face of chaos, you can survive anything. Congratulations, survivor. You've made it through the weightless madness of tips to survive the end of gravity. You've tied yourself to heavy furniture, embraced duct tape as the ultimate tool, and mastered the art of mid-air parkour. You've dodged rogue ceiling fans, created a zero-gravity community, and even found a way to sleep while floating. In short, you've done the impossible. You've adapted to a world where the ground is no longer your ally. But let's not sugarcoat it. Life without gravity is weird. It's unpredictable, chaotic, and sometimes downright terrifying. There will be days when you long for the simplicity of standing on solid ground, when every small task feels like a Herculean effort, and when you find yourself cursing the laws of physics for taking a vacation. That's okay. Survival isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. Through it all, you've proven that humanity's greatest strength is its ability to adapt. We're creatures of creativity, ingenuity, and a little bit of dark humor. When gravity disappeared, you didn't float helplessly into the void. You figured it out. You tied yourself down, built a community, and even found a way to laugh at the absurdity of it all. That's the spirit that keeps us going, no matter how unmoored the world becomes. So what's next? Maybe gravity will return, snapping everything and everyone back to the ground with a thud. Or maybe it won't, and this is your new normal. Either way, you're ready. You've built a toolkit for survival, not just for living without gravity, but for thriving in the face of chaos. And if you can handle a world where your fridge floats and your dog takes naps on the ceiling, you can handle just about anything. As you float into the unknown, remember, the ground may be gone, but your determination is still firmly rooted. Gravity might have let you down, pun intended. But you've risen to the occasion, literally. So tether yourself to hope, embrace the absurdity, and keep moving forward. The future is weightless, but your resolve is rock solid.